Hello students, welcome to grade 12 biology. This is the second lesson of unit 4, evolution. But before directly we go to today's lesson, let us revise and recap what we have seen in the previous lesson. In the previous lesson, we have seen theories of origin of life. You remember that we have seen 5 theories of origin of life. These were the theory of creationism, theory of spontaneous generation, eternity of life, cosmozoic theory, and biochemical origin of life. Today we are going to see theories of evolution. That was theories of origin of life. Now, the early ideas of evolution move on. Hypothesis states spatial change over a time. You know that evolution is a change over a time. And you know Darwin, and before Darwin, there are scientists who have contributed to this study. Now let's go and see the first theory of evolution, Lamarck's theory. Lamarckism is a theory developed by French biologist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck that claimed the organism passed on to subsequent generation traits acquired during their lifetime. So Lamarck has 2 ideas in his theory. The first is use and disuse. You can see these 2 giraffes on the left side and on the right side. On the left side, this doesn't use neck, but on the right side, the giraffe used neck. So giraffe's neck length is due to strengthening of due to usage of the neck. This is one idea. The second is inheritance of acquired traits. Traits changed acquiring organisms' lifetime could be passed on to offspring. Lamarck believed that the change occurred to living organisms can pass from the parents to offspring. For example, webbed feet in water bird can be passed to offsprings. Now let's see the strengths and weakness of Lamarck's theory. Strengths is emphasis on gradual change. Lamarck give emphasis on gradual change, but weakness is lack of genetic mechanism. Lamarck doesn't have genetic mechanism genetic evidence. Modern view of Lamarck is role of epigenetics. Now let's consider the second Darwin's theory, Darwin's natural selection theory. That is the old view of Darwin. Darwin have seen overproduction and struggle for existence, variation and survival for the fittest. Organisms that have good variation and compete, can survive and become fit and survive. The other is adaptive radiation. We can see an example, Galapagos finches, which are good example of Darwin's natural selection. Let's summarize and see the observations of Darwin. There are 2 main observations. The first is all species tend to produce more offspring than can possibly survive. Darwin have said that organisms that produce more offspring can survive more. And there is a variation among the offspring. he has also said that there is always a variation, difference among the offsprings, And from these two observations, he deduced there will be a struggle for the existence. Always there should be competition, struggle for existence. Why? Because there is overproduction and resource. Always resources are limited, and organisms that reproduce more can survive more. And there will be a struggle and competence among members of the same species, even in the same species. The other is some members of the species will be better adapted than others to the environment because there is a variation in offspring. So the two ideas that we have seen, survival for the fittest and variation in the offspring, can be said that some of members species will be better adapted than others to their environment, and the other is struggle for existence, and the one that is competes the other will survive, and this is known as survival for the fittest. So we can combine these two dedications, and Darwin have proposed this one. Those members of a species which are best adapted to the environment will survive and reproduce in greater numbers than others less well adapted. So you can see the two ideas here. Species which are adapted to their environment, they do have variation and will survive and reproduce in greater number than others. They have become better and they have become survival to and fittest. So this is the summary of the two dedications. The modern theory of natural selection was proposed by Darwin and Wallace, was based on the following principle of observation and dedication and deductions. These are adaptation. The first one is adaptation. All organisms adapt to their environment. One. Second, variation. All organisms are variable in their traits. So there is a variation among species. Variation, adaptability and variation. All organisms are variable in their traits. All organisms adapt to their environment is two ideas. The third is over-reproduction. All organisms tend to reproduce beyond their environment's capacity to support them. So organisms that over-reproduced and produce more offspring can survive more. The other is natural selection. Since not all organisms are equally well adapted to their environment, some will survive, obviously, and reproduce better than the others. The one that produce more offspring and the competition will survive more, and this is known as natural selection. What are the evidences that supports Darwin's theory? Fossil discovery is one. This is known as transitional species. The other is genetic confirmation, DNA similarity among organisms, and the other is observation in the Galapagos Islands. Finches that are found on Galapagos Island could be one of the evidences that supported Darwin's theory. Now let's compare Darwin's theory and Lamarck's theory. Variation, Lamarck theory of use and disuse, environment change, and creating a need for the organism to change. Darwin, there is a natural variation in the features, and the variations are heritable. That is, it's heritable, but here there is environmental change. Survival, development of new features. Example, longer neck is a result of usage of the neck, that is in order to survive, Darwin environment selects in favor of those traits that adapt the organism to the environment and against those that do not. This is natural selection. Regarding inheritance, new features acquired during lifetime of an individual are passed to the offspring. This is the Lamarck's belief. Individuals with advantage variation of traits in a greater number and pass on this advantage variation to their offspring. So the advantageous parents pass traits to offsprings. That's the belief of Darwin. And regarding the general evolution, new species over time arise from Lamarck's theory, and new species over time arise from both theories. So those are theories of evolution. Now let's look at new Darwinism. This is a revised version of Darwin's theory of evolution, and by means of natural selection, one in the old theory. And this theory is now accepted by most biologists, and Darwin's original theory plus genetic theory and theories about animal behavior. It has genetic makeup as well as animal behavior. Behavioral aspect is added to this new Darwinism's idea, this new theory. So this is a new, and it's accepted by most biologists this day. New Darwinism incorporates genetics and molecular biology, gene pool and allele frequency, impact of mutation and animal behavior. So beside animal behavior and genetics, it has also molecular biology aspect, genetic, gene pool, and allele frequency. Nowadays, gene and gene action are the driving force for evolution in the theory of natural selection. So new Darwinism is as a result of genes and gene action. An allele determines a feature that gives an organism advantage in its environment. So alleles are responsible for this adaptation to the environment. The advantage of allele of a gene will survive to reproduce in greater number than the other types. Advantageous alleles pass to offspring in greater number than other genes or alleles. The frequency of the advantageous allele will be higher in the next generation of population. So in new Darwinism, alleles also take into account, and they will be passed from parents to offspring. So there are advantageous alleles that are coming in hand. This will bring us to today's to the end of today's lesson, and up to the next lesson. Goodbye.